At 16, Emma had mastered the art of staying quiet. It wasn't shyness, it was survival. After her older brother 2 years earlier, something in her home dimmed permanently. Her mother cried behind closed doors. Her father buried himself in work. And Emma? She floated through the hallways of school like a ghost with a backpack, barely touching the ground, barely speaking unless she had to. But then came Maya. Maya wasn't the loudest girl in school. She wasn't the most popular either, but she was kind, or at least she seemed to be. She sat beside Emma in English class and asked if she wanted to partner on a project. She complimented her drawings in the margins of her notebook. She offered a piece of gum and a small smile that felt warm in a hallway that had grown colder every year. For the first time since her brother's funeral, Emma let someone in. They started eating lunch together, watching dumb videos on Maya's phone in the library, messaging after school about nothing and everything. Emma thought maybe, just maybe, she'd found her person. Not someone to fix her, not someone to replace what she lost, but someone who didn't treat her like a fragile glass. Maya made jokes, teased gently, asked questions. Emma shared things slowly, like unfolding notes hidden in a box, the way she couldn't sleep, the panic attacks, the guilt she still felt for not answering. Her brother's last text. Maya listened. She didn't offer cliches or Bible quotes. She just nodded, sometimes holding Emma's hand while she spoke. Emma began to believe she had a safe space. She started writing poetry again, going to therapy without dreading the hour, even raising her hand in class when she knew the answer. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't sudden, but it felt like her world was tilting back into place. Slowly until the day everything cracked. It was a Friday. Right before the semester break, when Emma noticed people looking at her in a way they hadn't before. Whispers in the cafeteria, a group chat that suddenly kicked her out. 2 girls in gym class snickering as she walked past. She brushed it off, thinking maybe she'd imagined it, until one message changed everything. It was from Jordan, a boy she barely knew. Hey, is it true you made up the whole depression thing just to get out of PE? The words hit her harder than any slap could. She stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. What? Who said that? The answer came quickly. Ask your bestie. She told everyone in art class yesterday. Emma felt her stomach drop. Not Maya. Not the one person she trusted. There had to be a mistake. A mix-up. Maybe someone misheard her. Maybe, but then came the screenshots. Someone had recorded Maya, laughing, saying, Emma just loves the pity. If she didn't have trauma, she'd have no personality. It didn't stop there. The messages, the whispers, the looks, they all started to make sense. People weren't being cruel at random. They were following a script, one that Maya had written, one rumor at a time. Emma locked herself in the school bathroom that day and cried until the bell rang. The same girl who held her hand through panic attacks had been the one to turn those wounds into punchlines. That night, Emma didn't sleep, but she didn't stay silent either. Instead, she opened her phone and started scrolling through every message, every chat, every piece of digital proof she had ever received from Maya. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do with it yet, but for the first time in weeks, her hands weren't shaking. Emma didn't want revenge. At least, not in the way movies made it look. She wasn't interested in yelling matches or hallway confrontations. What she wanted to know, what she needed was for someone to finally believe her. For once, to not be told she was overreacting or sensitive or too emotional. She wanted truth to have weight. She wanted Maya's lies to stop being gospel. So that Saturday morning, with her hands still trembling slightly, Emma sat on her bedroom floor with her phone and opened every single chat she'd ever had with Maya. Not to reminisce, no. She was looking for patterns, for proof, for the way someone could say, I'm always here for you, in one message, and she's faking it for attention. In another, and it didn't take long to find them. There were texts where Emma had opened up about feeling like a burden, only for Maya to later text someone else. She cries like it's a competition. Girl needs a therapist, not a best friend. There were screenshots from a shared group chat ones Emma had left months ago, where Maya sent laughing emojis under a meme that said, Depression girls be like, cry once, post 30 stories. Then someone replied, Isn't that Emma? And Maya answered, Bingo. Emma didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she kept digging. Voice messages. Demas, even a selfie they'd taken together during their best friend phase. Maya had captioned it with "My emotional support raccoon" and shared it privately to a group Emma never even knew existed. By mid-afternoon, Emma had a folder. She labeled it Receipts. It wasn't just a petty collection, it was a timeline, a digital diary of betrayal, of how someone could sit beside you in therapy and mock you 5 minutes later in someone else's inbox. But Emma still hesitated. Going to the principal wasn't just a report, it was a declaration. It meant she was no longer hiding, no longer downplaying the damage. It meant saying, "This happened, and it hurt, and it matters." She stared at the email draft for nearly an hour. Typed, deleted, typed again, until her finger hovered over send, heart pounding like a drum. Her mom knocked on the door. "You okay in there?" Emma didn't answer. Not because she was angry, but because she was focused. Then she clicked. Send. The silence afterward was deafening. A full hour passed with no reply. Then two, and then a response. Not from the principal, but from the school counselor. "Emma, thank you for reaching out. I've seen the screenshots. We're taking this seriously. Can we talk first thing Monday morning?" That was it. No fluff. No. Maybe she didn't mean it. Just, "We're taking this seriously." Emma exhaled for the first time all day. She knew it wouldn't fix everything. It wouldn't undo the rumors. It wouldn't magically make the stares go away. But it was something. A crack in the wall of silence. A small, steady step toward reclaiming the dignity Maya tried to rip away from her. And in that moment, with her phone in hand and her heart finally steady, Emma realized something else. Maya's words had wounded her, but Emma's truth would outlast them. Monday came with gray skies and a heaviness in the air. That made Emma's chest feel tight before she even stepped off the bus. The school hallway buzzed like usual locker slams, shoes squeaking, half-awake murmurs. But to Emma, it all felt distant, like background noise in a film she no longer starred in. This day wasn't about being seen or fitting in. It was about being heard. She walked straight to the main office, barely noticing the few people who turned to stare. Some already knew she suspected, or maybe they sensed the shift in her. The quiet girl with her head down wasn't hiding anymore. The school counselor, Miss Jensen, met her at the front desk. Her eyes were kind but serious, the way adults looked when they knew a kid was holding something heavy. "Come on in, Emma," she said gently, holding the door open. Inside, the lights were softer. Chairs more comfortable than Emma expected, but her heart still raced. Miss Jensen offered water, which Emma declined. Her hands were cold. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. I want to explain what happened. All of it." And she did. Emma started from the beginning, from when she and Maya were best friends. How they used to talk every night. How Maya was the first person Emma trusted enough to talk to about her depression, about the panic attacks, the nights she couldn't sleep, the days she felt like a ghost in her own skin, and she was kind, Emma said. "At first, she told me she understood, that she was there for me." Ms. Jensen nodded, listening without interrupting. But then it changed. Slowly, she started making jokes, like I was dramatic or too emotional. At first, it was in private, but then I found out about the group chats. The messages. Emma reached into her backpack and handed over the folder she'd printed out. Dozens of screenshots, each one time-stamped, some with entire conversations, others with photos Maya had taken without Emma's knowledge. Her heart pounded as Ms. Jensen skimmed through the pages. She told everyone I was faking it, that I just wanted attention. Ms. Jensen closed the folder slowly and looked at Emma with eyes that weren't just professional. They were human. "Emma," she said carefully, "you've been carrying this alone?" Emma nodded once. "Well," Ms. Jensen said, "you're not alone anymore. What you've shown here is serious. It's not just bullying, it's targeted emotional abuse. And we're not going to ignore it." For a moment, Emma thought she might cry, not because she was hurt, but because she was finally believed. "What happens now?" she asked, voice shaking. "We follow protocol," Ms. Jensen said. "We'll notify administration, inform the district. And depending on the evidence," she tapped the folder gently, "we may have to involve Maya's parents. But before that, I want you to know this. You did the right thing." Coming forward was brave. Emma nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she left the office, the weight on her shoulders hadn't vanished, but it had shifted. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like she was drowning. It felt like she was climbing out. She walked to her next class with her head up. Maya passed her in the hallway that afternoon. Their eyes met for half a second. Maya smirked like she still thought she was untouchable. But Emma didn't flinch, because the door was already closed behind her. And the truth was already in motion. It happened just after second period. Emma was sitting in the back of her English class when the intercom crackled overhead. Maya Thompson, please report to the main office. The room paused just for a moment. Heads turned. Even the teacher blinked. And Maya, seated 2 rows ahead of Emma, didn't move right away. Then she stood, smoothed her hair, smiled. She always smiled. The kind of smile that masked everything: rumors, lies, even cruelty. The kind of smile that had fooled teachers, charmed parents, and convinced classmates she was the sweet girl, the honor student, the mature one. She carried herself with that fake poise, even now, as she picked up her bag and walked out, like she was going to an awards ceremony instead of a disciplinary hearing. But Emma knew that smile wouldn't last. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispers. People started piecing things together. Emma saw the glances in the hallway, the quick conversations at lockers. Something was happening, and Maya's name was at the center of it. Lunchtime came. Emma sat alone, not because she was avoiding people, but because she needed the quiet, needed to breathe. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ms. Jensen. She's been in the office for over an hour. The principal has the documents. Emma, read the text 3 times. A storm of emotions churned in her chest relief, fear, anticipation, and something else too. A bitter sense of justice. The bell rang again. And as Emma made her way to her next class, she saw Maya down the hallway. She was standing stiffly next to her mother, who had clearly been called in. Her face was pale. Her mother looked furious, not at the school, but at her. There were no smiles now. For the first time in a long while, Maya looked small. Later that afternoon, Emma was called back into the office, not to question, but to confirm. The school had acted fast. Miss Jensen and the principal walked her through the process. The screenshots had been submitted to the school board. The messages had crossed a line from school gossip into harassment. The group chats showed intent, repeated targeting, defamation, emotional manipulation. It wasn't just Maya's words, it was how calculated they were. She's been removed from all extracurriculars effective immediately. The principal explained, and a formal hearing with the district is scheduled. Her parents are involved now. The board may escalate this further. Emma didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. Maya had crossed too many lines. The system, slow as it was, had finally caught up. As Emma left the office, the sun was out. It felt strange after the grayness of the morning. Strange and welcome. She stepped outside, past the parking lot, where a few students lingered on benches and bikes, and then she saw her Maya, sitting in the passenger seat of her mother's car. Her eyes met Emma's through the window, but there was no smirk this time, no practice charm, just a glare, sharp, defensive, full of panic. Emma didn't look away. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to scream. The truth was already louder than anything Maya could say now, and Maya finally understood that being popular meant nothing when the truth stood in front of you, quiet, calm, and backed by evidence. Emma turned and walked on. There was still more ahead, but the worst part, being disbelieved, being alone, being humiliated, was finally behind her. And Maya? Maya had just begun to realize that actions have consequences. Real ones. By the next morning, the entire school was buzzing. Something had cracked wide open, and it wasn't just hallway gossip anymore. The whispers had taken on weight. Everyone had heard Maya had been pulled from her student council duties, that her mom had stormed out of the office, that her dad, a man no one ever really saw on campus, had shown up in a suit and tried to speak directly with the school board, but they were too late. The screenshots didn't just show a few mean messages, they told a story. A deliberate, cruel story of emotional abuse dressed up as jokes and just venting. Maya had started it, but she wasn't alone. She coordinated it. Screenshots showed her forwarding Emma's private posts to group chats, making comments like, "Watch how she milks this next week," and let's all act extra concerned and see if she cries. Her parents claimed it was being taken out of context, that Maya was under stress, that she'd never meant for it to go this far. But it didn't matter anymore. The context was clear. And the school wasn't the only one listening. Emma's aunt had gotten involved. She wasn't just a teacher, she was part of a legal advocacy group for student mental health. She took the messages, the dates, the patterns, and began organizing them into a timeline, a narrative. Emma didn't even ask her to. She just saw the pain in her niece's eyes and knew this wasn't something they could ignore that soon. The district called for an official hearing, not just with Maya's parents, but with the entire disciplinary committee. Emma wasn't required to speak, but she was invited to attend. At first, she said no. She didn't want to sit in a room with Maya and listen to the same fake apologies. But then something shifted. She realized this was about more than her dot, so she walked in. Maya was already seated, her parents beside her. Her mother looked defensive, angry even. Her father kept adjusting his glasses, glancing at the documents like they were written in another language. Maya didn't look at Emma, not once. The principal began reading aloud. The first messages, the ones that mocked Emma's absence, that turned her mental health into a meme, that encouraged others to spread lies like that she was doing it for likes, or just lazy and looking for a pitié. Then came the second wave of texts, more violent, more personal. If she disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even care? One said. Another joked about how she should just finish the job if she's so sad all the time. The room was silent, Maya's. Parents looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. She's a minor. Her mother finally said, voice trembling, "We had no idea she was doing this. She's under pressure grades, college, expectations." But the committee didn't blink. One board member leaned forward. "There's a difference between struggling and targeting. Your daughter didn't make a mistake. She led a campaign." Emma felt her hands tremble slightly in her lap, but she didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She was finally watching something she'd only dreamed of before. Accountability. They went through everything. Maya's removed privileges, the potential lawsuit pending if the harassment was deemed severe enough, and finally, the kicker, Emma's therapist had provided a report. Clinical evidence that the emotional stress from Maya's bullying had led to Emma's academic decline, isolation, and recurring anxiety attacks. There was no denying it anymore. When the meeting ended, no one clapped. No one stood, but Emma left the room feeling something new, heavier than victory, lighter than grief. Maya's parents didn't try to speak to her afterward. Maya herself sat frozen, staring at her lap like the carpet might hold all the excuses she'd run. Out of doubt, Emma walked past them and didn't look back, because this wasn't about revenge. It never had been Dot. It was about the truth finally standing on its own, and being louder than any lie ever told. A week after the hearing, the school sent out an official statement. It didn't mention names, but everyone knew. It spoke about taking mental health seriously, creating a safe learning environment, and addressing all violations of student conduct with transparency and care. Emma read it twice. It sounded nice, but she didn't feel safer. Not yet. Then, during Friday's advisory period, Maya walked into class like nothing had happened. Her head was low, her shoulders stiff, but she still wore makeup, still held her phone like it was an extension of her hand. People stared. Whispers rose. Emma expected her to sit in the back and vanish, but she didn't. The teacher cleared their throat awkwardly. Maya asked for a few minutes. They said, "She has something she'd like to share with the class." The silence turned from uncomfortable to suffocating. Emma felt her stomach twist. Maya walked slowly to the front. She didn't have notes, just a folded piece of paper she kept crumpling and smoothing. Her eyes were red, but no tears. She took a breath and said, "I just want to say I'm sorry for everything I've said or done that hurt anyone. I was going through a lot, and I handled it badly. I never meant for things to go so far." A few heads nodded. One or two classmates murmured, "At least she's owning it." But Emma just stared, because none of it was real. She could hear it in the way Maya avoided saying her name, in the way she wrapped her apology in vagueness. It wasn't about accountability, it was about damage control. And the worst part, Maya looked right at her just once, and Emma knew it. That look wasn't remorse, it was fear. Fear of what else Emma might have kept. of how much further this could go. After class, two girls approached Emma at lunch. They had once sat beside Maya, laughed at her jokes, shared her posts. Now they looked nervous. "We didn't know," one of them said. "Like, not everything. If we had seen those messages before." Emma didn't smile. "Didn't comfort them. But you saw enough to laugh," she said quietly. They didn't argue. They just walked away. Emma's silence wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. She was done carrying the weight of other people's regrets. Later that night, she sat in her room, reading some of the older texts from Maya. Not the cruel ones, the fake friendly ones. The ones that made Emma doubt herself before everything exploded. Compliments laced with backhandedness, questions that weren't really questions. Invitations that came with invisible strings. It took her longer than it should have to delete them. But when she did, she finally felt something lift. She didn't want an apology that wasn't for her. She didn't want sympathy from people who had watched her fall and only now offered a hand because it was safe to do so. What she wanted, what she needed, was peace, privacy, and time. Not long after, the counselor called her in. The school had arranged for therapy, not just to support her, but to help her rebuild confidence in a space that had once felt like a minefield. "You've been brave," the counselor said. "You didn't just speak up, you stood up." Emma nodded but said nothing, because bravery wasn't loud. It wasn't fireworks or speeches or public confrontations. Sometimes bravery was quiet. It was refusing to shrink. It was telling the truth, even when no one clapped, even when it changed everything. And now, finally, she wasn't alone in that truth. The story should have ended with the apology, with Maya sitting at the front of the classroom, pretending she'd learned something, with Emma finally being able to breathe again. But it didn't, because Maya's parents didn't see what their daughter had done as bullying. They saw it as misunderstanding that had ruined her future. So they did what people like them always do when the truth gets uncomfortable. They tried to erase it. Emma found out on a Tuesday afternoon. The counselor pulled her aside between classes and asked if she could come to the office. There's something you need to know," she said, gently, "and we wanted you to hear it from us first." Maya's parents had filed a formal complaint against the school, claiming their daughter had been unfairly targeted, humiliated, and publicly shamed. They argued that the screenshots Emma had submitted had been taken out of context, and that the disciplinary action had caused irreparable emotional harm to Maya. The word defamation showed up more than once in the paperwork, and now Emma's name was back on the line. Her stomach dropped. Again, just when she thought the weight had lifted, it came crashing back down, familiar, cruel, exhausting. But this time, something was different. This time, she wasn't alone. Principal stood firm. So did the counselor. They told her that the school was not backing down, and neither should she. "We've reviewed everything," the counselor said. "We know you told the truth, and if this goes further, we'll be right there with you." Still, Emma had to sit through a new round of meetings. She had to answer more questions. Lawyers asked if she had ever exaggerated her emotions, if she had ever provoked Maya in private. She felt like she was on trial for her own pain, like she was being asked to defend something that should have never needed defending. And through it all, Maya never once apologized again, never once asked her parents to stop. She let them march forward, building a case on a foundation of denial. She walked the halls like a shadow, silent, tight-lipped, and bitter. Her eyes still lingered on Emma during lunch, in class, in the library. But there was no more smugness behind them. Just panic. Then something happened that none of them expected. The screenshots weren't the only proof anymore. Emma's friends, quiet ones who had stayed on the sidelines before, came forward. One by one, they handed in their own screenshots. Private group chats, snaps, even audio clips of Maya laughing about Emma behind her back. The kind of evidence that left no room for interpretation. It wasn't just one message, it was a pattern, a campaign. Maya's parents were blindsided. They tried to claim it was all teen drama, but the school's attorney wasn't having it. "Teen drama doesn't leave a paper trail this long," she said. "Teen drama doesn't lead to documented depression and missed school days and medical reports." That's when the case turned, and everyone knew it. Emma didn't cheer. She didn't celebrate. She just went home and sat on her bed, clutching the phone in her hand, rereading the messages of support her classmates were now sending. It was surreal. Not long ago, she'd been the girl everyone whispered about, the one they rolled their eyes at. Now they were apologizing, thanking her, admitting they were scared to speak before, but not anymore. And for the first time in months, Emma slept without waking up in a panic. Justice didn't come with fireworks. It came with slow, steady courage. It came with truth that refused to stay hidden. It came with a community that finally stopped pretending not to see Dot and Maya. She wasn't suspended again. Not this time. But she was pulled out of school entirely. Her parents said it was for her mental health, but everyone knew the truth. Their case had fallen apart, and they didn't want to deal with the fallout. Emma watched her walk out of the building for the last time. No words. Just silence, and that, she realized, was enough. After Maya left the school, there was a strange quiet, like the kind that lingers after a storm, where everyone's still too stunned to move. Her name stopped echoing in the hallways. Her laugh no longer drifted from the back of the cafeteria. The group of girls who once orbited around her like planets without gravity began to scatter. Some pretended they were never close. Others posted vague Instagram stories about being betrayed by someone you trusted. But no one really said her name, not out loud. Emma thought it would feel like peace, like finally being allowed to breathe. And in some ways it did. But the silence left room for something else. Reflection. Not just for her, but for everyone. People started talking. In classrooms, in the counselor's office, even in quiet corners of the library. Students who had never spoken up before began, sharing their own stories of things they'd been called, of jokes that went too far, of posts that made them feel like less than human. Emma wasn't the only one. She never had been. But now it was like her story had cracked something open and the truth started pouring out. A teacher who had once brushed off a comment as just kids being kids now paused to listen when someone looked uncomfortable. The principal began hosting monthly forums for mental health and digital responsibility. And for the first time, the school didn't treat the word depression like it was contagious. They treated it like it mattered. Emma was invited to one of those forums. She didn't want to go at first. Her hands trembled just thinking about standing in front of a room full of people. But when she walked into the library and saw the chairs filled not just with students, but with teachers, parents, counselors, something shifted. They asked her to speak. She didn't rehearse. She didn't write anything down. She just told the truth, not with anger, not with tears, just honesty. I didn't come here to be brave, she said. I came here because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't expect anyone to care. I didn't expect anyone to believe me. But someone did, and it changed everything. The room was still, and then came applause, not loud, not performative, just real. After that day, things didn't magically get better. Emma still had days where she doubted herself, where she flinched when someone laughed too loudly in the hallway. But the school felt different now, a little less cruel, a little more aware. One afternoon, a girl she barely knew slipped a folded piece of paper into her locker. Inside was a note that read, "Thank you. You helped me realize I wasn't crazy." Emma kept that note in her backpack, right next to the screenshots that had once made her feel like her world was ending. Because now they were part of something bigger. A conversation. A shift. A reason. Maya wasn't the first girl to weaponize words. She wouldn't be the last. But she was the reason Emma found her voice. And now that Emma had it back, she wasn't letting go. It was a Wednesday. Cloudy, dull, unremarkable. Until Emma looked up from her locker and saw the last face she ever expected to see again. Maya. She stood just outside the school gates, leaning casually against the metal bars like she hadn't detonated her own reputation just a few months before. Her hair was different, shorter, dyed a deeper brown, but that smirk was the same. Like nothing had changed. Like she could walk back into this place and pick up where she left. Students began whispering in hushed voices, some staring, others pretending not to see her at all. One of the teachers was already on the phone, glancing nervously at the window. Maya wasn't enrolled here anymore. She had no reason to be near the campus except one: attention, control, or maybe a desperate need to see if the fire she started had finally gone out. Emma felt her chest tighten. She had faced down the whispers, the guilt, the pain. She had sat through months of people trying to rewrite her truth, But this was something different. This was Maya trying to rewrite her return, as if exile had never happened, as if no screenshots had been sent, no pain had been weaponized, as if Emma hadn't almost lost everything trying to reclaim her name. Maya spotted her. That smirk deepened into something else, almost amused, like she was daring Emma to walk over to make a scene, to give her one last moment of power. But Emma didn't move. She didn't flinch. She didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, Emma calmly turned and walked into the main office. She asked to speak with the principal, the same one who had received the screenshots, the one who had sat in the courtroom as Maya's parents tried to deny everything. "She's outside," Emma said simply. "At the gate." By the time security got there, Maya was already backing off, slipping into a car parked a block away. It wasn't clear whether she'd been dropped off or had driven herself, but one thing was certain: she wasn't supposed to be there. Later that day, Emma learned that a restraining order had been quietly filed on behalf of another student. Not her, but one of the other girls Maya had hurt, someone who hadn't gone public. Apparently, Maya had sent messages again, subtle, indirect, but enough to raise alarms. It wasn't Emma's battle this time, but it reminded her that the damage Maya left behind still echoed through the school in ways no one fully understood. Trauma doesn't follow a clean schedule. It shows up when it wants. And sometimes it shows up at the gate with a new haircut and a familiar smile. That night, Emma sat on her bed, holding the old screenshots again, not to relive the pain, but to remember the strength it took to expose it. She opened her notebook, the one where she kept every letter, every message of support, every silent thank you passed in hallways, and she wrote, "She came back, but I didn't flinch. That's how I know I've healed." Maya could lurk. She could pretend, but the story had moved on. And this time, Emma was the one writing it. It wasn't supposed to be me. I wasn't meant to stand up there in front of the whole auditorium with the lights too bright and the silence too heavy. But life doesn't always follow the program. And sometimes the people who tried to erase you end up giving you the loudest stage to speak from. The school had planned an anti-bullying assembly, ironic, considering how long they ignored what I went through. But things had changed. Since the screenshots, since the court dates, since the parents who used to smile in the PTA meetings were now whispering apologies outside them. The principal said they wanted student voices, real stories. Impact. I wasn't going to do it at first, but then I remembered the nights I cried into my pillow, the mornings I walked into school with everyone staring at me like I was fragile, glass. I remembered Maya laughing at me from across the lunchroom, whispering lies into people's ears, twisting my pain into a performance. I remembered the teachers who looked away, and the one friend who finally said, "You should show them everything." So I said yes. The day of the assembly, I wore the same hoodie I had on when Maya told our entire group chat that I was just pretending to be depressed for likes. I didn't dress up for the stage. I didn't put on makeup. I didn't try to look strong. I was strong. When my name was called, the auditorium went still. Some people didn't even know I was part of the event. Some probably thought I'd changed schools. But I stepped onto that stage like I belonged there. Because I did. I took a breath and spoke. "I want to tell you about the time I stopped believing I deserved to be heard. About how a girl I called my best friend started telling people I was lying about my pain, my silence, my tears. She said I wanted attention. What I wanted was to disappear. What I needed was help. What I got was betrayal. You could hear every breath in that room. Not a phone buzzed. Not a chair creaked. I didn't say Maya's name. I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. I told them how I started skipping lunch to avoid whispers. How I deleted half my social media because I couldn't handle the messages. How I started wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe I was faking it. Maybe I was just weak. Then I held up the screenshots and I read one out loud. "She's so dramatic. She just wants people to feel sorry for her." That's what she wrote. About me while I was trying not to hurt myself. I didn't read them all. Just enough. Enough to burn through the masks still clinging to some faces in the room. Enough to remind everyone that silence protects no one but the bully. Then I looked up and said, "But here's what I know now. You can survive being called a liar. You can survive isolation. You can survive someone trying to turn the world against you. But the moment you speak, really speak, they lose. And you win. When I finished, the room didn't clap at first. It was too quiet for that. Like the truth had stunned them all into stillness. Then it came, soft at first. One teacher stood up, then another, a friend from my old science group, a kid from gym class. Applause rising not like a performance, but like a confession. That day, I didn't just reclaim my story. I rewrote it. Maya wasn't in the audience. She wasn't allowed on school grounds anymore. But someone told me later she watched the assembly online. And when she did, she turned off the screen halfway through. But I stayed. And for once, everyone else listened.